You are listening now to the Spirituality Now podcast, the show that is solely focused on practical spirituality, leadership, and mindset skills with the aim and purpose of supporting you master your life. Welcome to the Spirituality Now podcast. Welcome to the Spirituality Now podcast. I am your host, Yvonne de la Flor, in this new kind of little setup for the podcast since we are now on video. Thank you for following. Thank you for subscribing. Remember that we are a philanthropic based podcast, and we do that so you don't have all of the commercials and you get our beautiful guests solely full for you, and you don't have to wait till the commercial ends. So my guest today is an ally of mine, a beloved friend that I met thanks to Mr. Tim Grover and Shari Wenk, which consistently, I keep saying that in my intros of the podcast. And it's my beautiful friend, artist extraordinaire, Jamie Scheppers. Jamie was born in Jefferson City and now makes her home in Colombia. She brings with her all of the experiences she gathered attending college in north of Chicago and Northwestern University, traveling around the world during graduate school and the early years of her magazine editing career. She traveled all around the world, and something that her bio doesn't say, she went to Thailand really young, studied Buddhism, went all over the world to gather a lot of beautiful spiritual and just life experiences that make her who she is right now. She made a career in the food writing world, journalism, and also moved back and forth and moved back to Missouri. And she was the project manager in the now defunct, I love that, web communications department at the University of Missouri. And most recently, the VP of administration at her family's beer wholesalership, the Scheppers Distributing Company, aka mainly beer. Jamie is now fully self-employed, working to grow her fledgling, I'm learning new words, jewelry and art business. Her art is inspired by simple doodles and crafts she did as a child, her travels to faraway lands, and the colors present in nature. As an artist, Jamie is largely self-taught, thanks to the wealth of knowledge available online, but she has cobbled together training here and there in the form of short workshops and classes. She first learned encaustic painting in 2016 from Elise Rugalo during a one-day workshop hosted by Ore Street Studios in Colombia. And more recently, she is dipped her toes into the world of metal smithing. Metal smithing sounds romantic. She's a member of the Columbia Art League and the Best of Missouri, hence Missouri Artisan Association. And Jamie always tells everyone with her art, you can focus on finding the rainbow in your storms in life. Welcome to the Spirituality Now podcast. So, my beloved friends, this is my beautiful guest and ally and fellow shoe pure tea lover, Miss Jamie Scheppers. Welcome to the show, love.
Hello, how are you?
Oh my gosh, and I love the neon vibes. We were talking that you just put the neon vibes in your wherever you are.
This is my home office that I'm sitting in. So
Oh.
it's part office, part craft room. It
Mm.
is where I spend my days now that I am a self-employed artist.
A self-employed artist. And Jamie, I work in the niche of being a spiritual mentor, spiritual guide, spiritual teacher. You sound far much more calmer than me. I think I should switch. I was telling our beloved mentor today in my very like me text that I sent her, Shari, that I think I'm gonna redo, relabel, rebrand myself. I'm not like a calm effect kind of person. I'm more like a storm survivor, like a storm surfer, right? Because no matter what I've done in my life, it's like storm, storm, storm. And I thought, this is not hardship. This is maybe God hired me to do that while I was alive. Anyways, you have a lot of peace and calm. I love it, Jamie. But we have a little ritual in the show, and I'm going to take you there if you can go with me. Before Jamie became this alchemist of metal. Before Jamie went to her home office, I know you've gone through a lot of storms in your life, but how was little Jamie? I want you to talk about the little girl Jamie, right? That when she was a child began to shape shift herself first to adapt to a humanity that is insane, right? To survive our beautiful family systems, a beautiful world. And who is she? Tell me, introduce us to this beautiful, creative, young child that is in you, that you carry with you today, and that I want to meet her. Tell us a little bit about her.
So, as a young child, I was, as most people probably are, very heavily influenced by the interests of my parents. Um, we had a great family life growing up. There was a lot of time spent at home together. I recall many, many nights in the basement of our home where my parents would be working on a puzzle. My dad would be playing records on his turntable, classic rock from the 60s and 70s primarily. And then my sister and I would be entertaining ourselves. We would either be building blanket forts on the couch, spinning until we fell over dizzy, and then laughing, and then doing it all over again. And so I just remember growing up in a very supportive environment, which, as an adult now, I realize not every child is so lucky to have. My mom was an art and fashion major in college, and that creativity just kind of, I was always around it, and I didn't necessarily realize that it was anything unusual again until I was older. And then my dad was a business owner, still owns the business that I worked in for 9 years up until this past January. But he also had many interests outside of business. I remember for a while I think it was probably more entertainment than any kind of real income, but he would trade stocks and draw his little charts with his mechanical pencils to track stock futures. He was into architecture. I remember, my parents would do puzzles. I would do puzzles. I would color a lot. I would paint. My mom would cook and garden. And so I was just always around those things. I also remember, more specific to me, I was a reader. I loved reading. I loved all the stories that books held. And I was a builder and a creator. I loved Legos and any kind of toy that you could build with. And, I liked making designs with things. Like I'm the person who would take like a bag of M&Ms or Skittles, dump them all out on the table, and then sort them by color and make designs with them as I ate them. So a little snippet there. Also, my parents got me into dance lessons at a very young age that I continued partway through college. I learned musical instruments at various points, took voice lessons, did musical theater. So
There's Jamie.
I have
did musical
dabbled in so many things.
We're down and dirty. For those of you who don't understand what I just said, like this is the Spirituality Now podcast, and you are just telling against we are down and dirty. Yes, we are. So I may or not, if you don't want to sing or something, eventually, you can do it in the show. But tell me a little bit about that. So you are really immersed, right, in this soup of creativity, of your mother being in arts, of your father being in business, but also having hobbies, and you being kind of attracting living into what you are becoming more of yourself today, right? But what in any aspect of the inner child, not all of them, right? I know a lot of people that said I had no issues in my childhood. I'm like, I'm so happy for one of us, right? I'm so blessed. But what was the contrast? What was the challenge? Because for you to become who you fully are, at least in my experience, right? We go through a lot of challenges when we actually forget who we are, or we push the pause button into the creativity, into the singing, into the adventure, into the whatever it is. We push the pause, I call it, to go to our Jesus age, or Jesus, this is not a Christian podcast, everyone, but our Jesus missing days where we go to explore ourselves, or learn things that we are not going to do in the future, to learn who we are and who we're not. So what happened as you are growing up and you are immersed and surrounded by this beautiful family, and that you having all this creative, wanting to put the Legos together, creating new designs, what happened? Is there a point in your life where you are like, I'm going to put a pause into that because I'm expected to be this?
There were several points in my life that I can look back on as being pivotal. I don't know that I think of any of them in like the pause button sense that you just described, but they were turning points in a way. When I first went to college, I forgot to mention this when I was talking about my childhood, but I was interested in space and I wanted to be an astronaut. And I went to space camp and then space academy. And I was born with a heart defect. It's never bothered me. It was just something that one doctor discovered, had it checked out. And he was like, oh, yeah, you might have this this little heart defect that might never bother you, but just be aware of it. Well, it turns out that kind of put me out of the running for ever becoming an astronaut, as limited as that opportunity already is. So I thought, well, I'll do the next best thing, and I will go to school for engineering.
Oh.
And so I went to school for engineering at Northwestern University, and it was so difficult. I was not at all prepared for how difficult those classes were. And I grew up in central Missouri at, a smallish compared to big city schools. High school, I maxed out all of the math and science courses that I could take. And I was still so unprepared being in freshman level college classes with students from all across the nation and a wide variety of schools. I tried to tough it out, but it got to the point where partway through that year, no matter how hard I studied, I didn't feel like anything was clicking for me. And it was frustrating, and I was not used to failing. And I felt like a failure. So I went to my advisor and started, the conversation of how do I change majors? And a funny thing is, when my parents dropped me off, Northwestern is a private university, for those who don't know, meaning it is expensive. And the University of Missouri, where I grew up, is a very good school and would have cost my parents far less money. So one of the things they said as a little offhand comment, I'm not even sure they really meant it, but they said, if you're not going to stay in engineering, there's no reason for us to keep paying the tuition here. So that was weighing on me a little. I ended up deciding that I wanted to change to be a journalism major. And I was attracted to that not because I wanted to write hard news and, be out in the streets with my notepad and my camera or whatever, reporting on crime or anything like that, but I wanted to get into the magazine side of things. And it appealed to me because every time I wrote a new story, it was an opportunity to learn a new topic, meet new people, get to explore more. I think I've always had this explorer's nature. And so I started taking steps to do that. I enrolled in one of the first courses. I was able to get special permission to join, even though I wasn't a journalism major yet. And I was able to successfully transfer into a top 3 journalism school in the United States. And so that was a turning point. Also, as part of that transition, I did my first study abroad program. I studied abroad in Thailand that summer. And, that was a whole thing for my parents. It kind of freaked them out. Oh my gosh, I'm going over across the other side of the world. I was only 18. I was 19 at the time, and I was going to go to Thailand for 6 weeks with a bunch of other college students.
I'm proud of you.
So, and they had reason to be scared of that.
Wow.
So that
So
was a
you go to
turning
Thailand,
point.
and what happens then?
Excuse me. In Thailand, I took a Buddhism course. I took, gosh, I'm trying to remember. It was a 6-week program. We did it as a cohort, and we traveled through different cities during that. Um, but it opened my eyes to this world outside of where I had grown up,
Mm.
um, even more than what living in the north suburbs of Chicago had done, because that in itself was an opportunity to be exposed to so many different cultures than I had been in central Missouri. I grew up in a very white Catholic group of people. I mean,
Oh.
it's not to say everyone here fits that description, but going to a Catholic school, and that's just who I was surrounded by.
Mm.
Um,
How, let
so in
me,
Chicago,
was there
yeah,
any impact before you go into the Chicago thing? Was there any impact in your life because of the Catholic Church? We have so many people in the podcast that religion creating such impact. For me, the Catholic Church, when I was little, I had to clean the aspect of you all are guilty just by being born. What, what? So for you,
that
was there
is,
any?
yeah, yes, a lot.
Mm.
And it's not something I talk about a lot, but I see how it's very relevant to the topic of spirituality. Um, I grew up, my whole family is Catholic,
Okay.
um, and I remember around seventh grade, I believe it was, in particular, where I was just like, I don't really believe in this anymore, and I don't think I want to be Catholic. But I stuck with it. I stayed in the Catholic schools. I chose to go to the Catholic high school instead of the public high school, just so I could stay with my friends. Um, I ended up being confirmed a few years later just because all my friends were doing it. And it was kind of one of those, well, if you ever decide to get married in the Catholic Church, it'll be done and you won't have to do it again type of
Right.
things.
Right.
But that was a difficult point in my relationship with my family, particularly my mother.
Yeah.
Um, there's several conversations that come to mind with that. I think we've gotten mostly past it now. And she's accepted that, I am a good, happy person without being a Catholic that goes to church weekly.
Yeah, you know why I brought this topic? I know these are the hard conversations to have, but I really feel that that's true spirituality. When we go through the
Mm-hmm.
metamorphosis, because a little bit, and we haven't arrived, right? Yeah, when you move from business into this business of the art and transforming metals, I mean, I didn't wear my bracelet, Jamie. I feel like a failed ally, right now. I should wear my Jamie Shepherd's. She does incredible art, but that's religion, right? That is when you shift culturally, spiritually, emotionally, mentally from things that you don't fit in their box, and you begin to transmute, transform, alchemize yourself into exiting those paradigms that other people are going to be offended because you used to live there with them, right? Other people are going to feel like,
Mm-hmm.
now where are you going? Out there of religion, out there of this business. It's a dangerous world out there. But guess what? This is the world that we are meant to live and to build in and to invite others in. So I brought it
Mm-hmm.
purposefully, not to make religion as spiritual, but to show people that the most spiritual thing one can do, in my experience, is to be who we are and begin to say spirituality is a game of deleting less, 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 and then, it's like I'm one, right? That's where the math starts. So
Yes.
sorry to interrupt you, but I wanted just to highlight
No.
that part. And I'm so infused, like with you, like with the Catholic Church. For me, was like, I mean, 2 years old, 3 years old, Jamie. I don't know if you're in the United States, in Mexico. You have to pump yourself 3 times in the chest to declare 3 times, I'm guilty, I'm guilty, I'm guilty. That's neuroassociative conditioning. I grew up guilty. I was guilty even about the things I never did. That's
Oh,
in
wow.
relationships that played so strong. So thank you for being open.
Yeah,
And so,
of
so your
course.
book,
Yeah,
yeah,
we didn't really have that practice.
thank
But
God. Thank God.
it's funny, yes. But it's, in talking about different cultures, that was one of the things and a conversation that came up with my mom. It happened after. much after college, I want to say it was probably around 15 years ago because I had moved back to Missouri by that point. And my mom was helping me garden, and she felt the need to just try to help me in the best way that she knew how.
Mm.
And, it was coming from a place of love. And she said, I just want you to join a church, any church, so that you can be happy, but make sure it's a Christian one. And I was like, whoa, 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 hold up. Because by this point, I had traveled to see different parts of the world, not just Thailand, but I'd spent some time in India, Central America. I'd been around. And I've met a whole bunch of people from a whole bunch of different backgrounds. And the thing that it just struck me, she's like, I want you to be happy, join a church, but at least a Christian one. And I was like, wait, so you mean like all the billions of people in the world that are some other religion can't be happy? And the conversation just died. She was like, oh, I think I really stepped in it there. And but
Jamie, but
we
now
reached
we're
a
talking.
mutual understanding.
Yeah, but I love that, and I know, and I love how you love your mother and your father, and how respectful you are. I can feel the respect. There is an analect of Confucius that I love. I love that as a virtue. I love that as a principle. I have that with our beloved Tim Grover, which is filial piety, which you respect your father and your mother, top, top,
Mm-hmm.
top, top, and to have these conversations with their parents and to bring the question, because a lot of people in spirituality, I got baptized before going to China to study with the Shaolin monks, and I studied Buddhism, study it right now. I don't know how much we want to talk about it since the latest news of the beautiful Dalai Lama just broke out in humanity. But I like to talk
Mm-hmm.
about this. But I love that you asked the question. Like, you mean that only Christian people can be happy and the rest of us can't? What about people that are born in Africa? What about people that grow up without knowing that religion exists? What about people that can hear, speak? What about them? Are we going to be failures, sent to hell just because we're not ordained in certain religions? So I love that you had the courage, respectfully, to bring that. So thank you. And so keep
Yeah.
going. I'm interrupting you because I think these moments are such a highlight for many people that are stuck in dogma religion because of fear of stepping into the church of who they are.
Or stuck in anything really. And
Yeah.
and I think a lot of the fear and, you know, distrust, confusion people have, not just with religion, but with anything, politics, relationships. You could put any label on that topic and it would probably fit, but it's simply because they just don't necessarily understand it. They've been only seeing one side of a subject or a topic, and they haven't taken the time or had the opportunity to explore another aspect of that topic. And I fully believe that's where my mom was coming from when she said that, and
Absolutely.
she hasn't experienced most of the things that I had experienced in my travels.
Well, and it's
Um,
okay, it's okay. Whoever is in their own world, that is a great world to live, right? That's because I
mhm.
don't know that. I just choose to live a different world, or live in a different country, or speak a different language. And I was gonna make something. This is not for your mom or your dad, but Jamie, I think we joined the church. You and I, we joined the down and dirty church.
I think so.
So whoever listens to this podcast, I don't know how good it's going to be for ratings, but I know it's going to be good for truth. Anyway, so carry on. So you go to
Yeah,
Chicago because I wanna go through the transition that you did. That was challenging, and I think a lot of people will go through that, right? From business to art, the artistry of business, right? From the business,
sure.
like hands on, into the art world, back to your soul. So tell us more about that.
So, yeah, so just, I ended up making that transition to journalism. Um, Around that same time, within like the next year or so, I also became very depressed
Oh,
for at least the first time I realized that's what it was in my life.
Wow.
Um, I don't know if it was burnout, it was taking on too much, but I ended up seeking, a doctor to help me through that. Um, we determined that, at least in my case, it was probably largely, some kind of chemical or hormone imbalance. So we ended up treating it with medicine. I certainly didn't have any like trauma or anything that I could think of that might have caused something. Not to say that I didn't experience something that, you know, my brain interpreted as traumatic,
Right.
but that was the first time I thought of that. And so I just kind of want everyone to keep that in the back of their head as I kind of go through the rest of my story. So I went to college. I finished up as a journalism major. I went to grad school. During graduate school, I had more opportunities to travel, and so I took advantage of them. And I graduated and started to work as a magazine editor. Um, in the Cleveland area. It wasn't the best fit for me. And so this is where I was like, I'm going to move to New York City. I'm going to go to culinary school. And then I'm going to work at Food and Wine magazine. Like, that was my goal. And so I moved to New York City. I went to culinary school. I graduated. Part of culinary school involved, they called it an externship, not an internship. Most people did them at restaurants. I was allowed to do mine at Food and Wine magazine.
Wow.
So I did that. It was just a few weeks. I made many missteps, and it wasn't what I thought it was going to be. But then, about 2 years after I moved to New York City, I decided the depression was kind of coming back. I felt very lonely in that city, and financially, it wasn't turning out to be a sustainable situation.
Mm.
And I was done with roommates by that point. So I decided at that point I was going to move back to Missouri. But instead of moving to my hometown, I was going to move to the college town 30 miles north of where I grew up. And I ended up working at the University of Missouri using my magazine skills, and I worked in the web communications department. First as a writer, and then within a few months, my job was restructured, and I became the project manager.
Wow.
And so I did that I was a little over 4 years into that when my cousin asked me to lunch one day and recruited me to the family business. And
That's
I
where it
said, you know
began.
what?
That's
Yeah.
what the call to the, in the hero's journey of Joseph Campbell, there's a call to adventure. And the call to adventure doesn't mean that we're going to have a great time. The call to adventure is, if we say yes, we're going to end up in the pit, in the dark side, and learning a lot of stuff. So tell me about that. I felt a shift in
Yeah.
stories, Jamie. I felt like, oh, Darth Vader is coming.
Oh, no. There's real
Luke Skywalker.
there in
Okay,
the story.
okay.
Yeah, maybe. But so, I said, you know what? Your timing is okay, but not the greatest. I am interested in doing this because I'm up for that challenge. I felt kind of maxed out where I was in that job at the university. And I said, the only catch is that I've got 9 months left until I'm fully vested in the pension. So you can
Oh,
either buy me out of that or wait 9 months. And so he decided to wait. And, 9 minutes after that, 9 months, 10 for good measure, just to, not mess up my pension. I made the switch, and I went from working at a public university to a private family owned business.
wow, which is a huge business. Tell us a little bit. So,
Yeah.
and we just interviewed someone else, a great gentleman, a man that his mom kneeled down to him at 4 and said she was leaving, and then end up killing herself. But he
Oh,
said
wow.
that he had to. That was a big, huge thing. But he said that he had to flip the switch. That's why, I sounded pretty controversial right now, but flipping the switch, and you did the same. It's the same, is there was a switch moment in your life, right? And you kind of leapt, right, from the private university thing to a very strong owned family business. So how was that,
Mhm.
Jamie? How did you, when you found out, like, hello, I'm here in the business of the family, what happened to Jamie?
It was a lot of culture shock. Um,
Culture shock. Boom.
yes, I mean, living in a college town around mostly college educated people, not all of them, but certainly people who all supported the idea of higher education, being that we
Mm,
worked and were at a university, um, tend to be more liberal. And then going to a private business with it's for those listening, the family business that I went to, it's a beer distributorship.
very well
So it's
known
a
beer
wholesale
for those of you who
business.
like beers. Yes.
Yeah, it was an Anheuser-Busch distributorship. Most of the distributors that work in the local areas are privately held, family owned businesses. Some are very, very large. Ours is considered on the smaller side compared to other distributorships. But, so basically, what we would do is purchase beer from beer suppliers or other beverages as well, but primarily beer for us. And we have a warehouse. We had warehouse workers, forklifts, um, truck drivers. So basically, we got it into our warehouse. We had a team of sales reps who would sell to anyone who owned a liquor license. So gas stations, restaurants, bars, grocery stores. If they wanted to purchase Anheuser-Busch products in our assigned territory, they had to buy them from us. And so then we had truck drivers who did the local deliveries off of large commercial vehicles. And then, of course, management to go with the sales team and the more warehouse delivery side of things. And so it was a culture shift. Very few of the people working in the warehouse and delivering, and even most of the sales reps, at least when I started, they didn't have college educations. They were very conservative. I went from a bunch of coworkers who entertained themselves with computer programming and anime and all the things you kind of find on a college campus that some people these days are starting to turn their nose up at least much more publicly than they used
Right.
to an environment of more conservative people who entertain themselves with, say, hunting and
Oh, wow.
uh, target practice with their guns and whatnot, and sitting around playing cornhole and drinking beer. Like, I'm not in any way trying to pass judgment on any of these things. It was just a very
On the
different
contrary,
environment.
it's important, Jamie, that you're saying this because so many people don't know how to navigate that culture shock. It's going to happen every time. Well, I'm generalizing, but most of the times, at least in my experience, when you go to another level or another experience, when you try to do something that is not going to work, even though you don't know it, right? Failures, everything, there's going to be a cultural shock from the past
Mm-hmm.
life that we lived one day before to the new life we're trying to adapt into, right? This happened a lot in COVID. So I think that your
Yeah.
story about this transition in this cultural shock is important for people to know that that's actually kind of what's going to happen, right? You are going to have these cultural shocks. And so when you are living that and you are realizing this is not my culture or what happens, how do you adapt to it, Jamie?
Um, I personally adapt to really any culture shock or situation by trying to distill everything down to its base components.
Wow.
And it's, I don't know that this is some magical method. It's worked very well for me, and I wish more
Yeah.
people would do it. But I try to not look at what the person believes or what they do. And I just look at that person. I say, that person is doing their best to live their best life, to be happy,
Hmm.
to take care of their family, and, to maybe earn a little extra to support their hobbies, whatever that is. And at the very root of the human existence, that's kind of what I see everybody doing. We all breathe the same air. We look at the same sun, moon, stars. We just want to be happy and healthy and take care of the people around us. And if you look at life and the people you meet and your situations through that lens, it's so much easier to be open-minded and have conversations with people. And so that is something that I probably picked up first when I went from Missouri to college in the Chicago area, and then when I started traveling. But then as I moved through different jobs and aspects of my life that I've participated in, that core way of thinking has kept me centered and allowed me to fit into many different situations.
Wow. Wow. And you go into the beer business from, I mean, my brain is starting to still to integrate, and I've known you, but these are new things for me to know, like from anime to hunting. It's like, Jamie,
Yeah,
only a down and dirty brain can understand. And look, with so much peace, I'm telling you, you are more a spiritual teacher than I am, like a spiritual guide. The
oh, I don't know
calm that
about
you
that.
is unbelievable. But from anime to hunting, from campus, university campus, to drinking beer and shooting guns, I kind of get excited with the contrast and then adapting. But
Yeah,
you do, in the Buddhist tradition, there is an area that I'm aspiring to, which is as a symbolic thing for focus, which is becoming a bodhisattva. And a bodhisattva is a human being doing great things for humanity, not only good, great things. And great things can be picking up the trash when you see it on the street. Right now, that's a great task because some people don't do it, right? Doing a kindness, returning to calm, helping someone with their business, whatever it is. But your main focus is to do good for humanity. And you have an aspect of the bodhisattva that I feel challenged in, which is I don't see the beliefs of people. I don't see whatever it is. I choose to see they're doing the best they can. They're aspiring for the same that all of us are, to be happy. So, with that framework, I imagine how was for you to be from that contrast of journalism and the magazines, the art, which now is helping you with the business of your soul, right? That you are living right now. How was with that aspect, with that awareness that you have, that compassion? I'm feeling a lot of compassion from you. How did you do the navigation of 9 years? You said, right, in being
mhm.
in this culture shock family business. How were you able to live through these 9 years and still do an incredible job and then transition from there to where you are here right now?
Well, I don't want it to sound like it was 9 years of hell or anything. I mean, I
I'm
adapted,
trying to make
and
it like, oh, let's go to the dark side.
no, like the thing with like moving to a different like culture or situation is like it might be shocking at first, but then it becomes familiar and comfortable,
Right. Oh,
and
oh,
and you can stay in a situation that maybe isn't ideal. You might stay in that situation for too long because it has become familiar and comfortable. And yeah, like who's to say? Maybe I shouldn't have stayed 9 years. It's hard to say. There were some things that happened that made me stop and realize like this is not going where I thought it was going to go.
right.
I can keep. I can kind of go back to the drawing board, figure out a new plan to get where I thought I was going with this company, or is this not the journey I was meant to take?
I love that. I love
And yeah, and so I when that roadblock, speed bump, whatever you want to call it, was put in my way, um,
speed
I
bump.
took some time. Like I didn't make a decision right away. My first response was, "Well, this sucks. Now what am I going to do?" And I basically with the business, I had to step back and let someone else try to take on that leadership role that I was gunning for. Um, and I realized I wasn't entirely comfortable with that. Like, in dealing with all that, I realized that the reason had accepted the invitation to come work for my family's business, was that with the intention and the expectation that I would be groomed and trained to take over the company one day. And this roadblock was a serious roadblock in my path to taking over the company one day, so that my dad and my cousin could eventually retire. Without getting into all the contractual stuff with suppliers, it wasn't a decision that was up to me or even my family. It was one of our major supplier made that decision and didn't approve me to become, I wasn't approved to take over the contract between our two businesses. Wow. And at that point, we're like, all right, well, we need someone else to get approved. So my brother-in-law started that path. I was initially going to sit back, let my brother-in-law go through the whole process, and then take another run at it once some personnel changed at the supplier. Mm-hmm. And in sitting back and watching him start doing that, it opened up the space for me to think, is this still what I want?
Good.
And all of that deep thinking made me realize, no, it's not.
Wow.
And at the time, I didn't realize I wanted to be.
Right. The power of thought, the power of thought. When we think for ourselves, like Tim Grover says, right? Magic happens. I don't know why for some of us, it takes so long. I stayed so many times, and I don't know if it's long or I'm not going to beat on myself more, but I'm an expert on staying longer than is needed in relationships, right? Or in situations that then life, with its beautiful ways, sends me another shock to like, get out. But for you, I'm so glad that you did it in the peaceful way, thinking. So you found out that it was not for you, and then what happened? What alchemy occurred?
Well, then the first thing that happened once I got this bad news that no, we will not approve you, was I had to clear my head. And I turned to art to do that. And I had no intentions with it to start. I would come home. That. Yeah. I came home, and after work, I would sit down at my coffee table. I would turn on Netflix and just zone out. I would just kind of let it autoplay, and I was only half paying attention. And I would start doing these little doodles with black pen, and then I would color them in with watercolor. And I would just do them and then set them off to the side. And a few months later, I decided that I was going to hand make some Christmas gifts for people. My girlfriends and I do a handmade Christmas gift exchange every year. And I thought, okay, well, this year I'm going to make a necklace for each one of them. And I didn't even use my own art. I used little pieces of a calendar that I had laying around, an expired calendar, the art at the top of that, and turned them into little necklaces. And everybody loved them. And they couldn't believe I made it, except for this one friend who is an artist herself. And she said, well, this would be cooler if it was your own art. And she maybe didn't say it with that tone of voice. Yeah. But, I had to try really hard not to be offended in that moment, because I wanted to give her the benefit of the doubt that she wasn't being rude. But I was taken aback by that comment. And then as I sat with it a little bit, I was like, you know what? She's not wrong. It would be cooler if it was my own art. And so I went home and I found some of those watercolor doodles I had done, and I turned a couple of those into necklaces. And I was like, yeah, I think I might be onto something.
They're beautiful. Jamie, do you have some? I can't believe I don't have my bracelet.
Well, I'm wearing one now.
Okay, everybody, look at zoom in.
So hard to see. Camera. We ought to just give them my website address so they can.
Oh yeah, we're gonna put all the websites, all the things, all your Instagrams, right? But so Jamie, I love. Can I say that I love that friend? It is the friends of mine, the allies of mine, and the mentors. Mr. Grover is like that. For those of you who
Mhm.
don't know, I always say in each podcast that I have an ally as a guest. I very soon I need to go pay like a fee of, to Shari and Tim for having this incredible guest that I met thanks to him and to Shari. But
Yeah.
Mr. Grover is like that. He won't give you the slack. He would be the he won't be nice, but he'll be kind enough to tell us the truth, right? And I
Yeah,
remember
that's what we say
someone
about
telling me,
allies.
yeah, that's
Yeah.
an allyship.
They say what you need to hear, not what you want to hear.
Boom. And I think your friend was an ally because, for me, like,
Mhm.
Yvonne, I would love to hear more of your wisdom instead of you keep sharing about others. I have a network television. I love to promote people. I love to help people elevate. But my mentors are like, when am I going to read your stuff? Watch your reel? What? Like, I'm like, oh, okay, fine. So your beloved friend says that, and you turn your watercolors, they're extraordinary. It really comes to life. I remember receiving my first bracelet from you when you first announced your business. I immediately purchased
Mhm.
one, and I remember seeing it like an eye, like a crystal eye that had so much story. So you shift into that business. I bet
Right.
there was a time, maybe I'm assuming there was a time of grief, of wondering, am I loyal enough, or like leaving the business and shifting into
So,
this. What happened?
yeah. So after that Christmas, or after I gave out those Christmas gifts, kind of all throughout the month of December, I decided, you know what, I'm going to start a business. It's just going to be a little side thing. I'm not going to turn it into anything big, but I'm gonna do it the right way because I wanted to protect the other family business. So I decided that I was going to form an LLC. I did it on my birthday, January 3rd, um, on my phone, from bed.
There you go.
I was just sitting here laying on the back doing
There you
that.
go. No excuses, everyone.
And yeah, like, granted, it's not that easy in every state, but it was in Missouri. And I was like, all right, I've got my business. I spent the next 3 or 4 weeks making my website, making some quick decisions, and just starting the business without the pressure of thinking it was ever going to support me.
Mm,
And 6 months after I started that is when I made the decision to leave the family business. And I said, all right, my drop dead deadline on that is my 42nd birthday. It was a year and a half. I was like, because at that time I was the VP of administration. I was and still am one of the minority stake owners of that company. And when you're, at the VP owner level, you can't just give 2 weeks notice and check
yeah, no,
out
you
and
can't
say, good
quit.
luck,
No,
everyone.
you gotta transition, do it right. Yeah.
Right. And so, in that year and a half, the first person that I tapped to, that I brought in and said, okay, this is the role you're going to be in now, but here's the deal. I am leaving this company in X number of months. Or honestly, at the time, I didn't tell anyone. I only told my cousin, my father, my mom, and my sister,
Wow.
because I didn't want to be a distraction to the company.
Mm.
And so I framed it as, you know what, I'm going to be taking on some other roles in the company. And so I need to bring in someone who can eventually become, the VP of administration. Well, the first person I brought in didn't work out. But when he left, he said, you know what, there's this other woman I know. She was actually married to someone I went to high school with. She has been managing the ice rink for however many years it was, and she's ready to move on to something new, and I think she'd be a really good fit.
Wow.
And so I ended up hiring her and training her, and now she is in my role and she's doing a great job. And
Oh,
so I'm
congrats.
thankful for
Congrats.
him, and the pieces fell into place. I am now, we're in the middle of April now, at least when we're recording this. I'm not sure when it'll go live, but
Looking
I
forward. Yeah.
left. So yeah, I left the family business at the end of December 2022.
Congrats. Congratulations. And how and your business now is called Jamie Scheppers Art, correct?
Close. It's JL Scheppers Art.
JL Scheppers. Well, okay, yes,
And
yes.
I use my first two initials for a couple reasons, because not that I'm trying to hide my name or anything, but my family's business is NH Scheppers, which is my grandfather's initials.
Yes.
And I wanted to pay homage to him
Oh
and
my
the
gosh,
vision that
Amy, I
he
love you.
had. So that's
I
why
love
I
you.
named it in a very similar way.
Jamie, we gotta drink tea together, really, not virtually. Right?
Of course.
My first company that I really built, not like I did a website, right? Like a real, my first LLC, it was De La Flor Teachings, and it's to honor my father and my ancestors. So DTI, it was,
Mhm.
so you're the first person that comes with that, and I love that. It's a way of honoring your ancestry. It's a way, again, filial piety, honor where you come from to honor where you're going to. I absolutely love that. I resonate. And now your company, which is beautiful, everybody, you gotta go look at it. So what do you create? How what is the process, a little bit, before we close this hour of podcast with you?
Sure. So the thing that I'm primarily focused on right now is watercolor jewelry. I
Mm.
take the watercolor paintings, it's watercolor and black pigment pens, and I place them behind glass
Mm.
and into jewelry settings
So
for people to
beautiful.
wear.
Mm.
And that glass magnifies everything.
Yes.
And it really makes the watercolor paint kind of take on a character that it didn't necessarily have just as a painting on paper.
Wow.
Um, so I think of it as a way for people to wear a little piece of art.
Yes.
Um, One of the first design that I did that was my own art, I ended up calling Rainbow Waves.
Oh, love it.
It's basically a wavy rainbow.
Yes, show us.
I did
Show
it in
us.
a necklace, but I have
Oh,
one here. So it's an abstraction of a
I love
rainbow,
it.
lots of colors. And I almost brought this up earlier when you were talking about all the storms in our lives, but
Yes.
that's how I view rainbows. The rainbow is the reward for surviving the storm. And rainbows mean so much to so many different people.
Yes.
They're a symbol for, rainbow babies and the LGBTQ side of
Yes.
things. I mean,
Yes.
this is not their symbol specifically, but the thing with rainbows is that they represent surviving something that was hard, something that was challenging,
Yes.
coming out of something that was dark, and
Yes.
it's literally like an expression of the light coming back.
Mm.
So,
I love that rainbows, and also it represents unity in diversity, right? And so we are wearing.
mhm.
I have my bracelet. I'm proud owner of a piece of art, and they're unique, right? Every single art is unique, right?
They're all hand drawn. So I have
Hand drawn, hand
started
drawn.
to, yeah, hand drawn, hand painted. So I do make multiples of certain pieces.
Yes.
I have the rainbow collection. I also have
Ah,
another tiger stripe collection, which is for the university that I used to work at, that is here.
wow.
That so those are my two core collections, and then I have other pieces. But even if I make multiples of an item, since they're hand drawn, they are
Very
unique.
unique. Absolutely.
So,
Oh, I love that. The unity in diversity, the reward for the storm. I was telling again,
mhm,
Shari today, like, I earned my calm. My calm was not like, oh, she got enlightened. No, I didn't. I actually got like hammered by the storm, and the return to it is calm. And wearing your bracelet, wearing your earrings, wearing your art is
mhm,
kind of a instant calm in a piece of art, a reminder of our ability to get rewarded by being an artistic aspect of us, being who we are. That's art.
mhm.
So, Jamie, kudos for taking the courage to do this, for bringing us. Without you doing this, I would not have that bracelet. I wouldn't have that story. I wouldn't have that reminder. I wouldn't have that option to see the rainbows as a reward. So, thank you for stepping out and into the path of your beautiful art. So we're in
Yes.
the end of the show. Anything else? Any words of encouragement for our community? For our Latin American community, for our worldwide community, of them taking a step into what their soul really desires. Any last words
Yeah.
for now?
I would just look for the rainbows. Like everybody goes through difficult things, but there's a rainbow at the end of it. And
Mm,
the really cool thing about rainbows to me is that, two people can be standing next to each other, and the rainbow is what happens as, our eyes interact with what's happening in the sky and the light. And so each person sees the rainbow a little differently. And I would just say look for those rainbows, and, don't fret about the storms. You'll get through it. There's always something on the other side of that storm. And, just keep looking for the bright side of things.
I love it. And it's the first time in my life that I hear there's a rainbow to the other side. Usually it's like, find the golden pot at the end of the rainbow. No, find the rainbow. Find the rainbow. Thank you so much,
The
Jamie.
rainbow is the reward.
I love that. Thank you. Thank you, Jamie. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Remember, we're a philanthropic based podcast. We do not advertise, we do not put like commercials. We want you to have the full gift of our beautiful guests. And please share us, subscribe. We are organic based and promoted and sponsored by De La Flor Teachings International and Brilliant Futures Production. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Gracias, gracias, gracias. Thank you, Jamie. Les mandamos un beso a todos. See you next week. Un besito. Adiós. We hope you enjoyed this new episode. And if you did, please leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or anywhere where you prefer to listen to your podcast. Make sure to check the links to everything we mentioned in this episode. For more news, future or past episodes, or for any other inquiry, please visit our website at delaflorteachings.com. Once again, thank you for listening to the Spirituality Now podcast.